Select the one word or phrase that needs to be used in place of the underlined text to make the sentence correct, or indicate that the underlined text is not in error. On a warm summer evening, an extraordinary World Cup victory was celebrated by 20,000 Madrid residents gathered in the historic Puerta del Sol. Before looking at our choices, let's see if we can find an error in the underlined phrase. Taking a look at the sentence, there don't seem to be any errors. Our sentence begins with a time phrase, on a warm summer evening. Grammar rules dictate that time phrases need to be separated from the rest of the sentence with a comma, and indeed we find a comma between evening and an. However, this sentence is written in the passive tense. Although this is grammatically correct, when the subject is known, it's better to write in the active tense. Our subject here is known. 20,000 Madrid residents gathered in the historic Puerta del Sol. This being the case, let's take a look at our choices to see if any of them offer a better alternative. B. 20,000 Madrid residents gathered in the historic Puerta del Sol celebrated an extraordinary World Cup victory. Jumping ahead a bit, we can see that this choice is identical to choice C except for one thing. This choice puts gathered in the historic Puerta del Sol in commas. What's the difference? It's quite subtle, but when the phrase is put into commas, it implies that we know these residents. It makes it sound like we have followed these residents along their narrative, and at this point they happened to be gathered in the historic Puerta del Sol. To put it another way, it sounds like we already know these residents, and therefore the fact that they're gathered in the historic Puerta del Sol isn't essential information we need to identify them. The fact that the phrase is set off on either side by commas indicates that it could be removed and the essence of the sentence would remain the same. However, this isn't the case. The phrase gathered in the historic Puerta del Sol cannot be removed from the sentence, otherwise we lack the essential descriptor telling us who these residents are. Choice C, on the other hand, doesn't surround this phrase with commas, showing us that it's an essential phrase to understanding who these residents are. In addition, it's written in the active tense, as opposed to the original sentence. Based on this, we can see that thus far, choice C is our best option for the clearest sentence. We can mark choice B off, but let's take a look at choice D just to be sure. D. An extraordinary World Cup victory was celebrated by 20,000 Madrid residents gathered in the historic Puerta del Sol. Without getting into the structure of this sentence, we can see that once again we find a sentence written in the passive tense, which isn't preferable if we know the subject. With this in mind, we can mark this choice as incorrect and mark choice C as our final answer.